Welcome back, and we're going to continue with the example here. And what I want to focus on in this section is understanding, first of all, why are we doing all of this? Why are we so focused on doing activity cost basing? Now, it's something, again, I'll skip around a little bit to the end to show you guys the final product. What I want to figure out is the profit margin that you see in this slide here. This is my company Living on the Edge. I want to figure out what's the true profit margin based on allocating overhead on my activities, which are design, marketing, and machine hours. And as you see here, I'm looking at profit margin using volume based, which is just allocating overhead based on direct labor hours, and my profit margin is totally off. So just to set the intention that there's a huge benefit and strategy in knowing your profit margin. So as we know our correct profit margin, we know which product to invest into and which product to sell into. This is why our workshop is going to be you creating your own business. Is sort of going to be like Living on the Edge is going to be kind of like that. I don't know, you could create a bakery shop, you could create a skateboarding goods shop, you can create martial arts gear business, whatever you like, whatever you're interested in is something, a passion of yours or your hobby, and then I'll give you instructions on what to do. What we're going to do is a case study on how to compare volume-based profit margin versus activity-based profit margin. And your job will be to come up with 3 activities also. Is going to be that you're going to have something like design, marketing, and machine, which will be your 3 activities. So going back to the, I don't want to call it boring, but less exciting for sure, example regarding our pen manufacturing. So with these pens, we're going back to how increasing production into purple and red created more complexity. That had us switch to activity cost so that we can see more detailed where the overhead is going. Okay? Again, overhead is something that's not materials, not labor. Okay? Overhead is something like the total rent for the plant, is the maintenance of the machines, is setting up batches, replacing ink, is something related to the overall production. What's our goal here? Again, our goal is to allocate that overhead to the different pens. Okay, and why are we doing this allocation? We're doing this allocation so that we know which pen we should produce. They're all different. People pay different prices maybe, or they're costing us different amounts because the production cost is different. Okay, now we came up with our activities. We have our activities. Handle production runs, set up machines, support products, run machines, provide fringe benefits. We have our activity cost drivers. This is how many production runs do we have? That's a driver. How many setup hours do we have for these machines? That's a driver, right? So now we're going to look and see how many of these drivers are being used for each product. Those are production runs. We know all together we're using 200. It's just the count the clerk gave us because we ran the machines 200 times. Now, let's see. 70 goes to blue, 65 to black, 50 goes to red, and 15 goes to purple. Altogether, we have 200. All right? So now, all we need to do is figure out how much is this production run costing us. Let's see, this is called production runs, and production runs run machines. So we have number of production runs is 200, that's the driver. Now, to handle production runs altogether is costing us $66,000. How many times do we run them? 200. So, it's $330 per run, alright? Now, look at this. We know how much is blue utilizing. 770 times 330. Black, 65 times 330. red 50 times 330 is just how many times they ran it times the price per run, right? So this matrix here gives us now that allocation, that what I was talking about, the 330 times 70. So you see it with the allocation of each production run as it relates to each product, right? Total was 66,000. Now you saw total 66,000 here still. It's just that now we've allocated it to each one based on the number of runs. And we did it with all the other activities as well. I would recommend for you to review that. And now we're looking at the updated income statement. So let's see. Now we have our manufacturing expenses are really based on this matrix, which is all based on the activities. Okay, so total allocated cost to red and purple is now much higher. So you see total allocated cost to red and purple being so high, in fact now we're losing money. So we're losing money here. Why? Because these red and purple pens have increased the overhead. Before we weren't allocating that much overhead to these guys, and now we are. Why? Because we went through each and every cost driver and looked how much each of these cost drivers is being absorbed by red and purple pens, and we came up with a number here that's much higher. Now the manufacturing, the overhead for red is 35,640, for purple is 12,498. So that's just a higher total, causing us to have this lower margin. Now, what's the conclusion of this? The conclusion is very clear that these two products, they're just not profitable. I wouldn't make them if I was a manager. In fact, it looks like it's a waste of our time. And beforehand, it looked like it was the most profitable product. So it's a substantial investment to do this kind of costing, because it tells you straight up how you should be producing your product, which products you should be producing, which products you should not be producing. So strategically, management can really benefit from figuring out which activities are and how they're using up costs, how they're soaking up these costs, instead of just doing it on a global allocation basis. So I'm going to introduce now the project that we're going to be doing. And this is going to be, Living on the Edge is going to be an example problem we're going to do in this class. And we're going to go over this in this style workshop to have you guys involved. Now, the background on this is a company that makes surfboards, snowboards, and hats. And in the next video, I'm going to go over an Excel model of how to break it down into activities using cost drivers and figure out the profit margin. And then I'm going to proceed to set up your homework and workshop that we're going to be doing together in class.